Please welcome to the stage our 8th Air Boss, Vice Admiral Bullet Miller. Give him help, boss.
How's everybody doing tonight? All right. Short man. Mac, thank you very much for that kind introduction. It truly is my honor to be here speaking this evening, and especially to be in the presence of the 4 World War II veterans, Midway veterans, with us today. And the family members of those family members that are here representing those that had passed as well. Because without the heroics, your shipmates, and your family members some 76 years ago, we would not be gathered here today. I'm also thrilled to return to the flight deck, the CV-41, my very first aircraft carrier. I checked my logbook this morning. I went into the office, checked my logbook, and verified the date of my very last cat shot right off of that bow, off of this historic warship, and it was on March 24th, 1986. Then, Captain Riley D. Mixon, who's sitting right over there, was in command, and he was sitting in the captain's chair on the bridge above us. And I was in a VA-56 A7E, Bureau number 157551, and that was the day we flew off all the A7s and all the F4s for the very last time. Again, so up here today, walking on the flight deck's been pretty emotional. It's emotional to walk this flight deck and to relive such strong memories. So with that, I know that to the veterans that are here today, they also have a lot of strong memories, and this is an emotional event for you. Before I begin, I'd like to especially welcome aviation pilot first class T.K. Ford. I understand this is your first time joining us here on Midway for this commemoration. You're joined by some veterans for this event: Commander Ellis D. Skidmore, Aviation Radioman First Class Charles Monroe, and Senior Chief Aviation Ordnanceman Irvin Wendt. It's an honor having all of you with us for another year's commemoration. In fact, my intelligence team tells me that you just celebrated your birthday, Senior Chief. Happy 102nd birthday. And I'll tell you, for those that maybe haven't had a chance to meet him yet, he is 102 years very young. And so, happy birthday, sir. And finally, thanks to all the military family members who are here with us today. We could not do what we do in the service of our nation without your support. I would especially like to welcome the wives of the World War II veterans. Mrs. Jean Hashman, spouse of Seaman Apprentice Russell Hashman. Mrs. Eileen Ely, wife of Commander Don Ely. Mrs. Jerry McKenna, spouse of Chief Aviation Machinist Mate Ed McKenna. We all thank you. So one piece of the Naval Aviation Creed that we challenge our sailors to live by reads, "We stand on the shoulders of giants who preceded us. And it is because of those giants, you giants in the first row here today, that we are gathered here today. 76 years ago, our nation and these men, many just boys at the time, fought and won the greatest naval battle ever. This one battle, starting June 4th, 1942, changed the course of the war and the course of our nation's history. For Torpedo Squadron 8, their story begins the night before. Aboard USS Hornet, the pilots of Torpedo 8 gathered in a ready room as the ship steamed towards Midway. Their skipper, Lieutenant Commander John C. Waldron, delivered his final words of wisdom to his men. He stated, The approaching battle will be the biggest of the war and may well be the turning point also. It is to be known as the Battle of Midway. It will be a historical and I hope a glorious event. We have had a very short time to train, and we have worked under the most severe difficulties, but we have truly done the best humanly possible. I actually believe that under these conditions, we are the best in the world. My greatest hope is that we encounter a favorable tactical situation, but if we don't, and worse comes to worse, I want each one of us to do his utmost to destroy our enemies. If there is only one plane left to make a final run in, I want that man to go in and get a hit. May God be with us. Good luck, happy landings, and give him hell. You see, those pilots that Lieutenant Commander Waldron stood before that night were a group of brand new ensigns. Young men, 21, 22 years of age, who had never carried a torpedo on a plane before, let alone dropped one on a target. They were under-equipped with an aircraft that was overdue for retirement. They were under-trained with merely classroom sessions from their skipper, talking about battle tactics such as angles of attack, fighter evasion techniques, and how to escape an enemy task force after dropping a torpedo. It was truly a recipe for disaster for the men, but the charisma and confidence of Lieutenant Commander Waldron made them believe that they truly were the best torpedo squadron ever. So the morning of June 4th, reveille sounded at 3 a.m. as the men awaited the orders they knew were coming. Hours passed until finally, just before 0600, "Man your planes," blared from the loudspeaker overhead. As the men at Torpedo 8 climbed into their cockpits that morning, Lieutenant Commander Waldron left his men with the final order to not worry about navigation, but to follow him. He would know where he was going. By 7:40 a.m., 59 planes, including the planes of Torpedo 8, were airborne and heading on a course towards the last known location of the Japanese fleet. The only problem was that the commander in charge of the air group made a navigational error and would never find the Japanese fleet that day. However, Lieutenant Commander Waldron disagreed with that navigational solution and changed course to follow his own instincts in the search of the enemy. And you know what? Those men, his men, those brand new pilots, followed him. Commander Waldron led them straight to the Japanese fleet, exactly as the mission had ordered. But the error on the remainder of the air group left them without the fighter escort or dive bomber support. The men at Torpedo 8 were up against desperate odds as Japanese planes greeted them with 20mm fire. One by one, they caught fire, broke in pieces, blew up, or cartwheeled into the sea. Waldron's own plane was struck in the fuel tank and burst into flames, plummeting in the water. Only one plane remained, that of Ensign George Tex Gay, who had just watched his commanding officer face a sure death. Ensign Gay channeled the words of Lieutenant Commander Waldron from the night before. "If there is only one plane left to make a final run in, I want that man to go in and get a hit." And you know what? That's exactly what he did. Ensign Gay targeted in on a Japanese carrier. As anti-aircraft fire erupted around him, he launched his torpedo just before careening into the ocean himself. Ensign Gay was the only pilot of Torpedo 8 that took off from Hornet to survive the Battle of Midway. And with him survives the story of the inspirational leadership of Lieutenant Commander Waldron and the heroics of the rest of his squadron. Because of Torpedo 8, Japan had expended most of their anti-aircraft ammunition. They had bunched their ships together into a much more vulnerable position for our second and third waves to attack. Because of Torpedo 8, the aircraft and men of Torpedo 6, Torpedo 3, Scouting 6, and Bombing 6 faced fewer losses and successfully managed to heavily damage and destroy the Japanese fleet. And it is because of Torpedo 8 we won the Battle of Midway. The heroics of Torpedo 8 are not few, nor far between. There are similar stories from the men aboard USS Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown, and the island of Midway, who launched aircraft on strike and carrier air patrol missions, recovered them, rearmed them, and refueled them, and then launched and recovered them again. Or the men aboard the submarine Nautilus that lured away a Japanese destroyer. That same Japanese ship led Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey and 2 Enterprise dive bomber squadrons to the Japanese carriers and their doom. Or the cryptographers led by Commander Joe Roquefort, who broke the Japanese battle plan. The list goes on and on. Midway was truly a joint victory, and all who fought there can take credit. So we gather each summer around June 4th to celebrate and commemorate the heroic actions and honor the memories of those we lost in the Battle of Midway. Not only because it was a turning point in the war, and not just because it was the most important battle in the history of the United States Navy. We celebrate the Battle of Midway because it was a test of our national character. And the fate of our nation was in the balance. And in the face of a superior force and overwhelming odds, a group of Americans was called upon to risk it all for their country, for their families, and for the future. They were called upon to risk everything for us. They did, and they prevailed. So today, young men and women step up to this call every single day. They stand. We stand on the shoulders of giants who preceded us. They are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, sons and daughters from all over the country and from many walks of life. In a time where other nations are challenging international norms and threatening the free and open international order, we must be ready to defeat a peer adversary. America's dominance on the high sea is not a birthright, and our victory in a high-end fight is not preordained. And just like back in 1941, we will depend on the new generation of will-be heroes to carry our nation on their shoulders. Forget about technology and shiny aircraft. It is our people who are our greatest resource and our asymmetric advantage in combat. Just as Torpedo 8 was flying aircraft that probably should have been retired years before Midway, I will take a naval aviator in a legacy F-18 over any adversary in any airplane at any time, any day. And somewhere in NAS Lemoore, or Whidbey Island, Washington, or MCAS Miramar, or NAS North Island, right now is the next Lieutenant Commander Waldron. The midshipman sitting back here in the center in the back row, maybe one of you is the next Ensign Gay. 76 years ago, those men, 4 of whom are with us here today, and many more are represented by their families, were just young men who wanted to do their duty and get home. I imagine they recognized they were fighting for the greater good, but I wonder if they truly realized their role in the fate of our nation. They likely didn't consider themselves heroes, but you know what? They proved to be just that, giants. I can only hope that we continue to do them proud and honor their legacy. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity, for you all for being here tonight, and for your service to our nation. God bless America, our Navy, our veterans, and you. Thank you.